And I think there is a line at which you should say, okay, I did that, and I'm looking to do the next thing. I'm looking to grow, and I am enough. I'm enough today. That doesn't mean I want to not grow for tomorrow. I'm working really hard on that. I'm enough, because I've lived much of my life thinking like everybody else has got it all figured out except me. Well, that isn't always the case.
Today's podcast guest is Marjorie Austin. She grew up in a small town as a stay-at-home mom, teaching music and piano in her home and playing at her local church. At age 55, she just realized she loved learning and wanted to expand her learning and started law school, working every night in night school to get a degree in law. She now practices as an estate attorney. And she said, whatever you do in life, you want to bring joy into your daily life. She wasn't feeling fulfilled and sought that fulfillment. She says that failure is only an event, and don't let failure stop you from doing what you really want to do in life. She says, have no regrets and take the chances that you've always wanted to take. Matter of fact, she says retirement is not an option for her, that she wants to finish well.
My name's Travis Sims, and I am the founder and CEO of AGC Accelerated Global Connections. And this is the AGC Experience.
Justin is an Army veteran of Operation Iraqi Freedom, where he deployed in 2004. He believes the American dream of owning a home is one of the largest purchases of most people's life. It's a long process that can be frustrating, scary, and really confusing. He experienced this back when he purchased his first couple of homes, and looking back, he wishes he had a friend that would take the time to educate him on his options so he could make the best decision for his family's future. That was his driving force to get into the industry. If you're looking for an expert in Minnesota or Wisconsin that can guide you through the process of purchasing, refinancing, or renovating your current home, give Justin a call or find him on Facebook using hashtag Justin Larson Home Loans.
All right, I am super excited to be here today with our guest, Marjorie Austin. And I want to thank you for listening and watching at home. We are getting listeners and watchers on our AGC Experience podcast from all over the country and all over the world. And we appreciate you listening. We appreciate you hitting that subscribe button. And we appreciate you telling others. You are helping us expand our audience. And today's guest is going to be an amazing podcast. I'm super excited to have you, your wisdom, your experience. I've enjoyed getting to know you over the last few years, and you recently did an AGC Talks that got the very first standing ovation, and you entered into the room singing and left singing. It had to be one of my most memorable AGC Talks of the entire year, and so I'm super excited to have you on our guest as a guest on our show. So Marjorie, would you please just share with our audience a little bit about you?
Well, thank you, Travis. First of all, let me thank you for this opportunity and thank any listeners. It's just a pleasure to share the world of Marjorie Austin, MJ Austin Law. To introduce myself, I am going to go back to the beginning of little Margie. Margie grew up in a small town and married, had 2 children, 2 daughters. I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. I am a music and English major. That's my undergraduate degree. So I taught piano in the home until my girls were out of school, and worked in church music, generally choir director, accompanist, etc. At a point, I had worked in financial planning. I used to say I reinvented myself every 5 years. Anybody else done that? At one point, I thought, if I had to do over again, I would have gone to law school. The more I thought about that, the dumber that sounded. So I enrolled in law school at age 55. That is meant to be an encouragement to anyone who feels as if it's too late to do things. It actually brought me here today to talk with you, Travis, and other listeners. It's an important part of who I am. I do try to reinvent myself, only it's not every 5 years now. I don't know that I have 20 or 30 years. I was just talking to my daughter last night and I said, I'm this old and I am still planning for the next 10 or 20 years. I don't know that I'll have that time, but I'm going to go for it because it's important for today. I am about personal development. I am learning. I am actually learning with this new COVID-19, like everyone else. I have ignored online social media things. I've hired someone else to take care of my social media for my law practice and found that was not working quite as well as I wanted to. Now I am doing some of it, and I hope I'm not the only one out there that's learning about these kinds of things. So that brings me to today.
Oh, well, awesome. Oh my gosh. There's a lot in just that opening. Uh, Everything from you reinventing yourself every 5 years. And I'm going to start with that. And I feel like I've even noticed that about myself. Do you think it's the entrepreneur spirit that causes that?
I do. I going back to, you mentioned the January presentation that I was privileged to be a part of for AGC. I started by saying, I think I was a little tiny entrepreneur when I was growing up because my best friend Jimmy and I went down to the main street of our hometown, walking up and down the street asking for jobs. I think we were about 10 or 11. And we thought that was just what you did. We didn't get a job, obviously, but I also then cut my mother's flowers in our backyard garden and I went around the neighborhood selling them. That wasn't accepted quite as nicely as the downtown experience. But yes, I think it is a part of being an entrepreneur. You are obligated, well, maybe not obligated, but you really need to take care of yourself. And do you stop growing because you get to a certain age? Do you stop growing because you think you've achieved something? Is it ever enough?
Yeah, I think the entrepreneur is always seeking growth, always seeking learning. And I know personally for me, like when I hit the ceiling in something that I'm doing, I'm like, all right, what's the next thing? Because I don't want to be stuck. I'm always wanting to seek growth. And I think your story tells a lot of that. And I think sometimes people, because I'm going to go, you grew up in an era where, that people were taught, first of all, that you get married, you stay married no matter what.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you hate each other, if you don't get along anymore, you stay married because that's what you're supposed to do. You get one job and you stay at that job for your entire life, even if you hate it and don't like doing it. You buy one house, and you stay in that house for the life of owning a home. That's what you grew up in. But you really went against all of that.
Not until I went to law school.
Okay.
I did the normal. Growing up as a woman, I was teacher or nurse. I didn't want either one, frankly. And my father would look at our early marriage and got to be watch out, that you don't move too often. And of course, we moved too often. And yes, it was supposed to be one job. And my father hated, he was a small town businessman. He had his own business and he hated it. He took it over from his father. He was the only son in the family. He had 3 sisters. And he just did it. And the poor guy was just as depressed as the day is long, so it was the times.
Yeah.
So thank God we've moved a little bit further than that.
So would you, since we classified you as an entrepreneur spirit, would you also consider yourself a dreamer? Are you a visionary style person?
I think so. I'm not sure how you define that some days. I do think I wanted to point out, being an entrepreneur and you excel at something, you finish a project, you finish this or that, and then do you forget to celebrate that? I think that I have lived too long in my life. Okay, I got that, and then it's time to do the next thing. It's never enough. And I think there is a line at which you should say, okay, I did that, and I'm looking to do the next thing. I'm looking to grow, and I am enough. I'm enough today. That doesn't mean I want to not grow for tomorrow. I'm working really hard on that. I'm enough, because I've lived much of my life thinking like everybody else has got it all figured out except me. Well, that isn't always the case.
That's a great point, Marjorie. I'm so glad you brought it up, because I think a lot of us that are very driven, I mean, I'll use myself as an example, and that is, I worked at one time in my life, I worked so hard at my previous business, and I was so focused on the growth of that business and excelling it and being the absolute best I could possibly be, that I couldn't turn it off. Like it consumed me. I was working from the time I woke up to the time I went to sleep, and I would look around, and my whole family had already went to bed, and it was midnight, and I'm still working, and I missed it. I missed everything. And when you ask someone, what are you working for? Often they'll answer questions like, well, so I can, support my family, so that I can give back to my family, so they can have all the things that we need, so we can do this and this and this. And then they look up and they're not enjoying all the things that they're working so hard for. So I love that you said, I'm enough, and celebrate the wins and take time to enjoy the successes that you're creating, instead of always being focused on the next thing.
It is a choice, isn't it?
Yes.
I love the word joy. Bring joy into your daily life. It will be enough. Tomorrow will happen whether you have a bad day or not. So choose to have joy, even when things go wrong. The challenges, the problems that we face, think of them as opportunities to grow and find joy in them, because, well, you do have a choice. I was going to say, you don't really have a choice, but you do.
You do. And actually, that's a really timely topic right now. And I know I'm going to date this podcast when I say this, but we're currently in the coronavirus outbreak. We live in Minnesota, both of us, and we're now like day 30 into our, what do you call it? Shelter in place, or whatever it is. And there are a lot of people getting up every day and not seeing joy. And so what advice would you give them?
Perseverance, one step at a time. Do what you can right now. And fear enters into our lives, whether we like it or not. How do we handle that? Reach out. A part of me has always thought that I had to do everything myself. I had to count on myself, do it myself. And I'm learning that community is as important. So reach out. It's okay to say, boy, I had a bad day, or I failed at that. We're going to fail. But that doesn't mean who we are. That was an event. That was not who we are. So if things aren't going well in this environment, which for many of us, maybe it isn't, we still have the choice to 6 feet apart, reach out to each other.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that you said that failure is only an event.
Yeah.
That's such a great inspirational message, and it makes me think of what was it? And I'm going to mess up the quote. Maybe you will know it. Was it Einstein that said or Edison that said I failed X amount of times
Edison.
Edison, okay, to create the light bulb, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
I proved however many hundreds of ways how not to create the light bulb, basically.
Right.
But he didn't give up, right?
No. And then is it Mark Twain who said something about work shows up every day in work overhauls. Keep working.
Yeah.
Put one step in front of the other and just keep going. We all have problems. We have fishy things that happen in our lives.
Yes.
So are we going to just sit down and have a pity party, or are we going to just keep moving?
Yeah.
Tomorrow will come.
I want to draw our conversation back to something you said earlier, and where you were sharing your story with us. You had a music degree, you're a music teacher, you're teaching piano, and at age 55, you say, I'm going to go to law school.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is an important message for this time, and that's because, unfortunately, coming out of this pandemic, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to need to reinvent themselves. There's going to be people that are going, I don't have a job to go back to, or this caused my current business to go in. I have to close the doors and I have to start completely over. And at age 55, you decide to go to law school. So, that's a unique story to do that. And what gave you the grit to keep moving on and to even consider, well, first of all, to consider something like that. Secondly, to go through, and I don't know how many years it takes for you to do that. And here you are now practicing law, and what a success story. So give us your advice, give us your secret sauce. Tell us how we can reinvent ourselves coming out of this.
I think, first of all, we have a job, we have a passion, we have a career, we have whatever we want to get up and do every day. We think that is who we are. That we think that's okay. I was a musician, piano and voice, and active in the church. I was on church staff, so I got paid there, and I got paid for my piano teaching. I thought that was who I was. I didn't think I could change that. I thought that was who I was. And yet there was something in me that said, gee, I would have liked, I love learning, so I would have liked to have gone to law school. I didn't want to get old and wish that I would have done something, wish that I would have done it. That was part of it. I thought, I'm going to get old and bitter and think, oh, gee, I passed up this, I passed up that. And so I just took a chance. I wasn't the smartest one there, I'm sure. I did have good successes. At 55, I thought I was a woman. I was not the right age to go to law school. I'm pretty sure I was the oldest one in the class, but we didn't talk about it. I thought my best friends would be people my age, and that's where I went to law school. At a night school. It was the only law school in the Twin Cities area at that time that offered night school. I thought, well, at least I'll have somebody to talk to, because there will be people coming back for a second career, and my best friends were not those. It was my daughter's age, the one with the right age. So it all worked out, and I worried about that kind of thing, and I didn't need to. And I could reinvent myself. Even coming out of law school, now I had a law degree and I had that music background as well. So for quite a number of years, I did both, because I thought I was still a musician and an attorney. A little bit too much to work with. And I found that I couldn't keep both going. At one point, I did resign from a church where I was on staff. And I found it worked just fine. So yes, you are at a certain stage in your life. Maybe your job went away, and we're in a new normal. It's not going to be, we're not going to go back to the way we were before this happened. And it's probably okay. If you choose to think, maybe I could do something. And if you try something and it doesn't work, who cares? What's the worst thing that can happen? Try something else. Just don't give up. You have other things in you, perhaps. I started, my mother had me singing solos in church before I went to school. I mean, I wasn't even hardly, and there I was singing. And so that is a part of my passion. I've often said, music is the passion of my soul, the law is the passion of my mind, and people are the passion of my heart. So I started with music, then I went to law, and now I'm finding I really love people and I need community really badly. It is a part of growth. We can grow. We don't have to do the same thing our whole lives. Just don't give up.
Wow. I want to know more about current times for you, and because we've spent a good portion of today's podcast and we've learned a lot from you. I've got already a whole page of notes of little nuggets that you've given us through this podcast. And listeners, I encourage you, if you're listening and you're sitting still and you're in your home or you're in your office, make notes, because you can revisit them later, and you can, I always learn more when I'm writing as well. It helps me retain it a little bit.
I do too.
Yeah. And so you got through law school and you did it at night. And oftentimes people say, oh, wow, that's the accomplishment. But now you've went on to practice law for however long. I'd love to know too, what type of law are you practicing? How do you set yourself apart from others? What's the day-to-day stuff like for you? We just want to learn through you.
My area of law is estate planning. That is the wills, the trust, powers of attorney, healthcare directives. I find it a very proactive area of law. It is helping people protect themselves and their loved ones. It is what I love to do. As I just mentioned, I have found I really love people. I didn't always think that. And I get the most out of it by the people that I meet and help. There isn't anybody who goes through my office that says at the end, okay, George, why'd we do that? Yeah. They know. I call it peace of mind legal planning. People come through and they thank me for allowing them to put their stuff in place so that they have protected themselves. My day-to-day is reaching out. I do my own marketing. I am a solo practitioner. I have my own law firm, and the marketing is very important to me. So I need to be out and about meeting and greeting people. I have a couple of marketing groups that I'm a part of. That's my major marketing. I have already admitted that social media is new to me and I'm learning, but places to meet people like AGC. I love to meet, especially people in the financial planning goes along with the estate planning. What do I do with my stuff at the end of my life? How do I protect my family? I'm not going to leave it up to chance. I call it not leaving messes. I've cleaned up a few messes. You don't want to do that. AGC has allowed me to get to know people, to meet and greet. It's an amazing experience, and my day-to-day is made more beneficial by those kinds of things. I love to meet and I love to help.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Marjorie, you're not only a member of AGC, but you're also a part of the Minnetonka team, and you come and you help and you come early, you stay late. You're always the giver and connector and wanting to help people. It just comes from a good place when people meet you, and that's what people remember about you as well. And so I'm curious too, when we're talking about estate planning, because there might be someone that is watching or listening on this podcast that have thought about it and put it off, shelved it. I mean, because we're we think we're invincible. We think that, I'll have lots of time to get to that. And maybe, today's current climate will change a lot of that. People will
Yes.
go, oh my gosh, you know what? I didn't plan this. And now here we are in a world pandemic, and I don't have my things in order. So what are usually the triggers? What is it that causes someone to go, okay, now's the time I need to come in?
To some extent, it's it's having family. When our first daughter was born, this little girl fit in the shoebox when we brought her home. I looked at her and I thought, oh boy, I have the responsibility of this little person now. So I made sure that we put a will in place. I hadn't thought about law school, by the way. That was long before law school, but I felt a deep responsibility and love for this little thing. So we put a will in place in case something happened to us. I wanted to say who would raise her. Now, we didn't need it, but we put the protection in place. It is about protecting. So it's when you have a family, you got somebody to protect. We will do a lot of things out of love for our children that we wouldn't do for ourselves. When you have a life event happen, sometimes I have people come in because they have lost somebody and they understand. We all know we're going to die someday. We don't get up in the morning thinking, I'm going to die today. We get up in the morning to go through the day, to live our lives, and that's the way it should be. But we need to put protective things in place in the event that things happen. I have one client who I didn't meet the husband. He had a terrible car accident. He's still alive, but he is incompetent. He will spend the rest of his life in a nursing home. Unfortunate, the wife now needed to sell her home. She had a buyer. She had another home that she could buy, but she needed to sell this home first. On their deed, they had, like most couples, bought the house together. They had their names on the deed. The husband is now incompetent. Legally, he can't sign that deed. They did not have a power of attorney for finances in place. Because of that, we had to petition the court to put a conservatorship in place to allow legally somebody to sign that deed so they could sell that home. Several $1,000s and court time. A conservator was named to do that. Guess who it was? The wife.
Yeah.
With a power of attorney for finances in place ahead of time. The just in case stuff. None of that would have been necessary. Those are the things. I thought of it the other day. I was listening to NPR and they're talking about it's time of the time of the year for tornadoes or different things that might happen. That so many people don't listen to the weather reports that are coming through. They stay in place when they maybe should have taken refuge, but they just don't think it's necessary. I thought, oh boy, does that sound like estate planning? Put things in place just in case. It's a little bit like insurance. We're protecting against risk. Now, my daughter is now grown and mom and dad have been around. That will was not needed, but it could have been.
Sure.
So anytime you have a life event, I have clients coming in now. I've had people calling more than normal because they realize that things are changing and they need to take the protection.
Yeah,
So
and you might actually see a big uptick in people that are more aware today than they were a month ago. So, I'm thinking about my own circumstances, and I'll share a few things that, because I've had a will for a long time. I did that at a pretty early age, and when my son was young, and I was doing the same thing. I didn't quite do it as early as you did with a new baby, although that makes absolute perfect sense. And I also, I grew up in a place, a small country town, and finances really wasn't taught that well.
Mhm.
It wasn't something that was shown to me or given importance to me. I had to learn it along the way. And I got a will in place. I think it was when I'm getting ready to turn 45. So I think it was when I turned 30. When I turned 30, I thought, oh my gosh, I don't have much longer. I need
That's
to get this.
relatively early, by the way.
When I turned 30, I'm like, oh, I'm not going to live much longer. I need to get this in place, and so I put a will in place, and my son was young, and I was married at the time, and then I looked up, and life moves fast. It just does. And I looked again, and I'm like, okay, I'm no longer married. My son is grown, and I need to change this. I need to change the way that things were in place. So another life event took place for me.
Mhm.
Then 6 months ago, I got remarried after my fiance and I had been together 5 years, and now we're 6 months married, and needed to update again,
Mhm.
right? And so now, the last time I updated this will be kind of a fun fact. It was my wife's birthday, and we decided that we're going to go jump out of an airplane on her birthday
There you go.
and did skydiving. And
Did you
so I'm
put
like, oh my gosh,
documents in place first?
what was that?
Did you put documents in place first?
I did, yes. Yes. First of all, I called my insurance company and I was like, am I covered? Will this cause anything in my life insurance? No. And then I'm like, all right, I need to update my wills. Now, my wife thought I was crazy. She's like, oh, we're fine. There's nothing going to happen to us.
Yep.
I've never jumped out of an airplane before, and I think we should get this done. So we updated wills again at that time. And I think partially too, we lost her sister and her father about a year apart, and that also going through that because her father didn't have any of those documents in place, nothing. So there was no will, there was no we didn't know how he wanted his arrangements to be handled. We didn't know what to do with the house. There was a long legal process with the house to be able to take that, get it sold, all that stuff. So I personally just want to recommend to our audience from a consumer standpoint, that this is an important thing, and you don't just do it once, but you revisit what you've put in place every so often as you need to.
Absolutely. I think it reminds me of where we started today when we talked about the kind of environment that I grew up in. My father had a will in place and he never looked at it again.
Yeah.
Didn't have to. Not too much changed. That is no longer the case in our world, and I don't know if it's really that true for everybody, but I kind of think it is. We have things that change, and it's important to update. Often when people are going on trips, they will call and say, of course, we're not doing that right now, but that will change again. And, when you get on an airplane, you're not too sure, especially if you're going a long ways. So any kind of a life change. I have also I have two daughters, as I mentioned. One of my daughters was hurt in a skiing accident when she was a senior in high school. She's done a beautiful job with her life. She's very active and involved, but she does have a disability. And so we have what is called a supplemental needs trust, a trust that can be put into place for families who have a child or with a disability, a member of the family with a disability. So when I die, if there's anything left to split between those two girls, part of that daughter's can go into her trust to protect her.
Sure.
That's
yeah.
Kind of. And when somebody dies, that's another time when people, okay, we saw what happened with fathers estate. Just because somebody doesn't have a will when they die doesn't mean that there aren't legal things that happen. So it's better if you can say what you want to have happen than to just, I've seen families fight over all kinds of things, including the flowers at the funeral. I mean, it's just, really.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. And I know after going through this with my wife's father, I immediately went to both my parents who are both still living. And I was like, look, I'm one of 8 kids. There are 8 of us.
Oh boy.
And I'm like, even if I'm not in it, that's okay. I'm just like, just do something, because I don't, I'm thankful I get along with all 7 of my siblings. However, sometimes when life events happen like that, it's some of the biggest stressors of anyone's lifetime.
Yep.
And then it causes arguments and division that shouldn't ever happen. And if it's laid out, if it's the way it's mom or dad or whoever wants it, then there's no question about it. It's like, well, this is what they wanted.
I remember one gal saying to me, Margie, she had 2 sisters. She said, the 3 of us sat by mom's bed and we asked, well, mom, have you got your affairs in order? And mom said, oh, no, I'm going to let you girls fight over it. She said, we didn't think we would, but we did.
Yeah.
I have heard people say, oh, we all get along so well. And then I say, okay, but it's emotional. And wouldn't it be better to just clarify? Give your family the gift of clarification so they don't have to figure it out at a time when they're grieving.
Oh. Well, I want to ask you just one last thing, and it's probably a question you may or may not be prepared for. I don't know. I never prep our guests on what I might ask you. And so you went to law school at 55. I'm not going to ask you your current age, but I want to know, do you see retirement in your future, or do you see yourself working all the way till life is done for Marjorie and your story finishes? Because there are people that work the rest of their lives, and there are people that go, you know what, I just want to go sit by the beach for a while. I've accomplished all I want to accomplish.
I have not accomplished all I want to accomplish. I am so excited for each day to get up. I do not believe in retirement. I think if you don't like your job, get rid of it, but do something. So retirement to me is out of the picture. I want to continue doing what I'm doing as long as I can chew gum and, walk, as far as I'm concerned. I would like to, one of my goals is to finish well. Whatever that means, I'm not sure exactly what that means. It will have to play itself out, but I want to finish well. I don't want to be feeling sorry for myself. I want to be as active as I can. I work really hard to take care of my health so that I can continue to do that. I can't predict the future. Nobody can. But I want to be able to keep going as long as I can. I saw my father in a job he hated, in a career he hated. He was just really kind of a depressed little Eeyore. And I just don't want that. I want to be a blessing to the people I meet each day and a blessing to me. We hear the golden rule, love it, do unto others as you would want them to do unto you, and love others as you love yourself. I think sometimes we forget to love yourself. We can't love others if we don't love ourselves. So part of my loving myself is to keep going. It's a one step at a time. And it's having joy in that. So no, I'm not going to retire, I hope.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. This podcast sure has been a blessing for me. And I know it's been a blessing for our listeners and watchers at home. And, my dad's one, he's at retirement age, but also doesn't ever think he'll retire. He's always doing something and working at something. And so I can respect that. And I think it's awesome. So Marjorie, if someone wants to get in touch with you, if they've enjoyed today's podcast and they want to either get to know you better, or they have estate planning questions, or they're like, you know what, I've put this off as long as I can, and I listened to this podcast today, it's a sign I need to get my estate in place, how do we reach you?
Well, reach out either by website or email. And by the way, people often don't do anything about this estate planning because they think it's such a big deal. I'm here to say, reach out. It is not a big deal. It's not rocket science. We talk, we visit, we get to know each other, and I will help you along the way. It is not hard. It's easy. So you can see my website.
Yeah, I'll read it off there. It's mjaustinlaw.com. And we have listeners and watchers from all over. And because I know sometimes law is practiced by state, is there certain states that you are licensed in?
I'm licensed in the state of Minnesota.
Okay, so if you are a Minnesota listener or watcher, that's mjaustinlaw.com. If you want to email her directly, that's mj@mjaustinlaw.com. And if you're listening from outside of Minnesota, there may be someone that Marjorie could send a referral for you as well, and still help you find the right person to get your things in place. So awesome. Well, thank you, Marjorie. I want to say thank you so much. You've been an awesome guest. You've shared lots of great things with us, and I'm so appreciative to have you on as today's guest.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you, Travis.
Great. And for those that are listening and watching at home, thank you for staying with us all the way through this podcast, listening to every detail, making great notes, taking these nuggets and learning from them and applying them to your life and sharing them with others. And one of the ways that you can share with others is you can share this podcast with someone that you love, someone that you care about, someone that you respect, someone that you want to hear this podcast. So please share it with others. Hit that subscribe buttons for more great content coming from the AGC Experience.
Cool.
This podcast was produced by Elation Studios. Go to www.elationstudios.co to learn more. Elation Studios. Discover your voice, clarify your vision, build your life.